welcome to Off Screen. Let's get cinematic. Where? On your couch. That's right, we're bringing you all of the best movies for your 7-day guide to everything movies here on this podcast. I'm Becks Perfect.
I'm Van Connor. Welcome. So, cinematic fun ahead, Miss Perfect. I've got a couple that we can talk about, starting with The Exception. Or as I'm trying to remember what the actual the title for it. Well, I think it's Undtagelsen is the Danish title for this. This is from Jesper Nielsen, and it's an adaptation of the Booker Prize-winning novel by Christian Jungerson. It is about 4 women who work in a Danish research centre for genocide, and they start getting trolled and death threats from outside that form these sort of fractures in the relationships between them, as well as the paranoia for everything that's coming from the outside.
I thought you would say you'd make some sort of quip about you being the exception, and I thought we'd be going down that route, but you went serious straight up. I'm down with that. Cool. Yeah. I was like, you can tell what mood Van's in when he comes straight in and goes like, I'm gonna talk seriously about movies today.
That's it. Oh god, I slipped there. I became like an adult for a moment.
I know. What is going on? And
okay, yeah.
I mean, you know, we're talking about, to kick everything off, with both of these movies are subtitled, right? So it's going to appeal to a specific audience who can tolerate is the wrong word for this, but I do think some people struggle with subtitles. And when you see films, I always think about how great Parasite is, because you get lost in the film that the subtitles don't matter.
You know, one that I always use as an example as well is the first Raid movie, because it's such a wonderfully constructed movie that you could actually watch that without the subtitles on at all.
Yeah.
You could just watch that in its native tongue, no subtitles, and you'd probably know exactly what was going on story-wise at any given point, because it's just so visually performed anyway. But that's one I like to quote for that.
So how does this, I mean, this sounds like it's a thriller, right? So how does this, like, you know, we've mentioned big ones like Parasite and The Raid. How does this kind of compare for a Western audience? Well, actually, it's a Western film, but a non-Danish speaking audience still trying to get involved in this movie?
Well, first of all, there's not really a cultural barrier. You know, past it being in another language and subtitle, there's not really a cultural barrier. It's a fairly universal enough story. It's accessible enough. As a thriller, it's really good. Like, it's a really solid thriller. Like, I was hooked on this. There's a smidge of surrealism, but the performances are great, and the direction and the staging of it, which is by, I'm trying to remember what Nielsen actually directed before this. I think there's one of the relatively recent Ozark-like streaming kind of shows that he's been involved in, but I can't remember which one specifically. And there's a style to this that I really liked. It has something of that nastier edge that we're starting to see rise up in female-driven horror and thrillers in the last 2 years. So thinking, for instance, of things like The Invisible Man and Us, you know, the idea of female empowerment through survival and visceral violence, and cunning and wits at the same time. This is very much in the vein of that, but there's a lot more of a 90s style, almost Sharon Stone thriller kind of a vibe going through this.
Yeah,
like, you can absolutely see this. You could see this being remade, like, with 4 amazing Hollywood actresses.
I was going to say, who's kind of the Sharon Stone-esque character in this? Looking at the poster of it, you've got like a blonde, a kind of mousy brown, a red-haired, and then a brown-haired girl. So I'm kind of thinking, it's almost like Bombshell. I'm kind of thinking like Margot Robbie, maybe Charlize Theron, Nicole Kidman in there, and someone else. I'm not sure.
Well, one face I did recognise, and she does kind of walk away the sort of the MVP of the film. And you're gonna have to forgive me the pronunciation. Siedse Babbitt Knudsen, who it turns out I recognise from Westworld. She's a big player. She's one of the frequent faces, maybe not one of the big players, but one of the frequent faces in Westworld. And she is absolutely terrific here. I think she gets probably the meatiest role out of the 4 women. But they're all uniformly great. And one of them gets a sort of diminutive role, but they're all great characters. The staging of it allows them a lot of room to go with that. If it has a downfall, it's only, and I think this comes from the source material most likely, it's that it needs to go a little bit more sensationalist in the 3rd act. It ramps up, just kind of, it stops being about the characters as much as it is about the contrivances of plot,
Yeah.
as it were. It goes a bit daft, would be the short version, but it's good enough that it survives that.
Yeah.
And it's still a really solid kind of 4-star 1990s level Sharon Stone-esque thriller. Like, I would watch the hell out of this if it were made in 1993 with Sharon Stone and Sharon Stone and Nicole Kidman, for instance. It would have been amazing.
Yeah, amazing. And do you know what I think? With us getting more involved in foreign TV and film just on a more day-to-day basis, there are sites here in the UK attached to things like Channel 4, like Walter Presents, that specialize in kind of like Danish noir and other really cool foreign movies that we can see at the touch of a button.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's also the services like Mubi as well. Mubi I think is like $4.99 a month, and they add one sort of sociologically important film per day, regardless of where it comes from in the world. And they're not all necessarily strange art house films from Denmark and nothing like that. You might get a Parasite, or at the same time you might get, I think last week, for instance, I think they added Wes Anderson's fantastic Mr. Fox. It's basically, they are kind of like a streaming platform mixed with a film school in a strange way. They're very cool about it.
And of course, Netflix has loads of foreign movies on there. So if this is your bag and you really enjoy the idea of watching some foreign movies, look, the first two we've got for you, The Exception, number one. Number two, what we're going to talk about in a second, The White Tiger, really great options for you. So The Exception is available on digital from today, and you can catch that. So if anyone does take a look at that and want to give us some feedback, definitely let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And speaking of Netflix and their involvement in world cinema, because let's not forget, Netflix won. Did they win Best Picture with Roma? I think, didn't they? Because we did Oscar night together.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I cast my mind back. I kind of don't.
I think it did win. I feel like it won Best Picture.
I'm going to check that out because I actually think, controversially, I don't think it did.
But regardless, it was nominated at any rate.
Yeah.
But regardless, they are back with another highbrow, high-end foreign language thriller this week. And this one is The White Tiger. Now, this comes to us on the back of a marketing campaign that very heavily features Priyanka Chopra, because she's also a producer on this, with, of all people, Ava DuVernay.
Wow.
Yeah, this is an adaptation of a novel that's by Aravid Adiga, I think his name is. It's directed by Ramin Barani, who did you see 99 Homes a few years ago with Andrew Garfield and Michael
No, I've
Shannon?
heard of it, but I didn't catch it.
I didn't get to see it because it didn't wind up being a sort of awards contender, but there was talk of it being. So it got relatively good reviews. He also did the Michael B. Jordan adaptation of Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah, gotcha.
Years ago for HBO, which again I haven't seen. I hear very good things about, and I'd be inclined to expect good things about based on this, actually, which stars relative unknown and rising star Adarsh Gaurav. He is, I'm trying to remember his name. He is Balram Halwai. That's it. I remember his surname, but not his first name. Balram Halwai. He was raised in the slums. He moves to the big city to work as the driver for the family that basically own his slum village, as it were. And as he settles into this role, he basically finds himself scaling the ladder of servanthood, which from his meager beginnings is all he aspires to in life. But when his masters betray him, when they force him to take the rap for a crime he didn't commit and they actually did, it starts in motion this drive to rebel, this need to game the system and basically exploit it to his own advantage. So you know what? It's time for him to get his.
Over the next weeks, I learned the ways drivers cheat their masters.
Okay, take.
Number one, give your master phony invoices for repairs that are not necessary.
Thank you, sir.
Two, sell your master's petrol to other drivers. As you gain confidence, cruise around picking up and dropping off paying customers. Delhi has many pickup points. Over time, you will learn them all.
Okay, so firstly, just a little update on what we were talking about earlier. Roma actually won Best International Feature Film at the Oscars. It didn't win Best Picture. Anyway, that aside, this film, okay, I'm going to go straight in for the jugular here. Priyanka Chopra. That's what everyone wants to know. Is she any good?
She's very good in this. Now, she's not as major a player in the show. She's the third lead. Now, and in terms of stature, that very much befits what you would say. She is the third lead. There are some great performances otherwise, though. I do think that Adarsh Garav, I'm going to have to try and get that pronunciation down, because I'm going to feel like I'm going to be talking about this movie a lot, because I really, really liked it. Adarsh Garav is this brilliantly, just unexpectedly charismatically, like he really charms from the get-go in this sort of really unorthodox, hypnotizing a way. He just draws you in. You are off on this. It feels almost like a sort of fairy tale story. It feels like almost a grand old fairy tale, but at the same time it's gritty and it's grounded. It does have that slightly pulp airport novel sensibility to it. You do know that this came from a novel because it has that flow and that pattern to it. But again, you're kind of captivated by that charm that he brings to what is ultimately the sort of fairy tale demeanor. Outside of him as well, Rajkumar Rao, who is his direct master, the one he does Sir, who he drives around effectively, who's Priyanka Chopra's husband as well. He makes for something of a very endearing presence as well, because it's this perfectly balanced role where you can see this spoilt brat rich kid, but at the same time there is that humanity in him. At the same time, it's all the more depressing whenever he kicks that humanity aside and then leans back into the Draco Malfoy-like moments of his spoilt rich brat persona. I think it's a really, really good movie. I think the cinematography in it is really terrific as well. I liked the sound of it. It was a little depressing to have that yet another film set in Asia begin with that Punjabi MC track, that same one. You know the one. Yeah, that exact one.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. So listen, let's round up the two movies in terms of the ratings that you give them. So let's quickly go. The Exception, how many thumbs up are you going to give for that?
I'm going to give The Exception 2 thumbs up, and I'm going to give White Tiger 2 thumbs up as well. I think they're both really, really good, solid rides.
Yeah. Brilliant. So there's some great recommendations. Catch both The Exception on digital and also The White Tiger on Netflix, all available from today. Coming up next, we're going to keep you where you need to be on the couch right now with some top films for free view on your telly box.
Welcome back to Off Screen, and we're kicking off your roundup of everything we think's worthwhile and cinematic on your telly box, as Miss Perfect says, on Saturday, the 23rd, so tomorrow, Film 450. What we got, Miss Perfect?
Oh, one of my favourite family films we have got. Of course, it's about a young bear who can walk and talk. He comes from the jungles of Peru and he ends up in London, and he loves, like I do, a marmalade sandwich. Of course, we're talking about Paddington. This is the colourful, brilliantly animated, brilliantly cast and acted movie that will put a smile on your face. And I have to say, it might even have spawned an even better sequel to the first. Oh.
It's funny you say, because I associate you with Paddington whenever someone mentions Paddington.
I know what you're going to say.
I always immediately think of you, because I always remember how giddy and filled with childlike wonder and excitement you were just before the screening of Paddington 2 a few years ago, with the little marmalade sandwiches cut in the number 2 shape.
Did you remember how many of those marmalade sandwiches I ate before the screening? I was gorging on them.
we went full ham on those things. Yeah. We really did. So that's the thing as well. You say about how everything about this works. The casting is so good in particular, because you feel like as well this was going to be Colin Firth originally doing the voice of Paddington, and then I think they decided he sounded too sexy or something. He sounded too good. In fact, he didn't quite have the wonder. It was too star powered.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine it. Yeah, Ben
Whishaw filled in, yeah.
Yeah, and what a great gig for Ben Whishaw. It was just such perfect voice casting there. But then you've got Hugh Bonneville in there, Sally Hawkins, Julie Walters. This is a film that I think, is quintessentially British. And it has the comedic balance where it knows how to take the mick out of itself. It knows how to entertain the kids. It knows how to entertain the adults. This is like a full circle It comes at you from every angle, and just if you don't have a smile on your face when you watch this movie, you've got a heart of stone. I mean,
totally. And I think the first one as well, because the first one's the one that has Nicole Kidman as the villain, the sort of Cruella-like villain that wants to stuff him. She wants to stick him in the museum or something.
Yeah, it's like Night at the Museum kind of feel to it, but then actually she's quite evil. She plays evil really well sometimes, I think. And it's the great thing about these movies, and obviously in the second movie we get a fantastic comedic turn from Hugh Grant. And there's
yes, that Hugh Grant villain is the best,
isn't it? Like the moment, one of my favourite bits of both films, but of the second film in particular, is when you go into Hugh Grant's character's apartment and there's all these old photos of actual Hugh Grant, like publicity shots, all that kind of stuff, and it's such a brilliantly British comedic moment. It's fantastic.
You know what I discovered the other day? You talk about how they're using like actual photos of Hugh Grant. Apparently, in the movie Gone Girl, the photo they use of Rosamund Pike, like for her missing ad. Apparently, that is her photo from the London Critics Circle Awards in 2013 or something, and that's apparently where it's taken from.
Wow!
Which I just thought was just an amusing little weird crossover there.
I like that. I like that little anecdote. So Paddington, film for $4.50 will certainly brighten up your weekend, even if Storm Christopher is still hanging around, which I really sincerely hope he's not. That will just get you going. Now, one of my favourite films of all time, which I watched when I was, I think, again, far too young to appreciate it, but really loved it, is Fargo. This is on ITV4 at 11:05 p.m. Are you a fan of Fargo?
I am a fan of Fargo. I don't think anyone can not be a fan of Fargo. It is kind of the quintessential Coen Brothers movie. It's in the top 5 if it's not kind of everyone's most associated one now. I think it was one of the staple cult films of the very very mid 90s. In fact, I think it's 95 or 96.
Yeah,
Fargo. But I think it's the first. I think it's the first time I can remember Frances McDormand properly getting her due. She had been in films before, but she was a very sort of middle of the road player, I think, before in things like Darkman, playing the love interest in that, things like that. But going to Fargo was, I think, the first time she started getting any props, and then of course led 15 years or so later to Three Billboards.
Oh yeah,
her role, her applause in that, and now she's getting love for Nomadland. So I feel like Fargo is a quintessential film of the Frances McDormand filmography, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, alongside William H. Macy, Steve Buscemi, for me, this is the story about, she's essentially like a Mountie police officer. That's
North Dakota? I want to say it's North Dakota, I think.
One of my favourite lines in this is, and you probably see it when it's promoted, is where she sits talking to the girls in the bar and they're like, oh yeah? And they're like, yeah. It's fantastic. It's so great. And it is, it's classic Coen Brothers. It's, she was up for the Best Actress Oscar for this as well. And, she is a powerhouse and can lead any tough movie, because I think that's what she is. She's a tough character actress and she plays this role really well. So if you've watched maybe the Fargo TV show and you're thinking, what spawned this? What has kicked this into place? You have to watch the original. Yeah, it's so good. So treat yourself, guys. Sunday night, 11:05 p.m. Maybe press that record button if it's a bit too late for you, but it's definitely worth keeping in your collection. Right. Speaking of keeping in your collection, Dan, take us through to how we're going to kickstart our week, because it's a big one.
Yeah, let's go for a bit of trash then. So Monday night, ITV4, 9 p.m. I want to just preface and say, when we picked the films this week, the way this works is I give Becks a list of all the half-decent films that we would consider half-decent films that are going to be out for the week. And she picks one for each day. That is it. And I'll occasionally chime one in. Like, I'll say, can I have this for Thursday? And you pick the rest. I don't mind. And that's kind of what's happened here, and she's picked this one, and I'm so glad she has, because this is one of my go-to trash films. It's the best of a bad bunch, admittedly, but if you want a film that's just... This is the Aldi ramen noodle of cinema. That's what it is. This is not even the super noodle snack. This is not even the just add milk, boil on the hob for 2 minutes pasta snack of the cinematic offering. This is really the 5p Aldi.
This is why we love the mid-90s. This is a 1995 film. What we're talking about is Under Siege 2 Dark Territory. I didn't even know it was called Dark Territory.
But it never gets called that, and I love it. I love that it's called Under Siege 2 Dark Territory. Yeah. And it's because there is a segment in the film in which they go into a place called Dark Territory. So to explain, right, so this is the second cinematic feature to sport the character Casey Ryback, played by Steven Seagal, who in the first movie was a chef aboard a US aircraft carrier, or a warship, that then got taken over by terrorists, and he was the only one who had to die hard his way to freedom. This time around, they're doing the same thing, but instead of on an aircraft carrier, he's on a train. And he's traveling with his niece, who's like a 16-year-old Katherine Heigl, and he's also got an assistant who's a sort of bellboy played by Morris Chestnut. And the guy taking the train hostage is played by Eric Bogosian as a presumed dead NSA hacker who's just mental, as he claims. They keep going on about how he's just snapped, he's just insane, damn it, or he's just a psycho. And even he references it over and over. And his team of unforgettable goons who must, prevent Casey Ryback from, taking the train back, whilst they attempt to hold the government hostage over a state-of-the-art cyber weapon. I'll give you the gist from this dialogue.
Ryback's tactics.
Ryback?
That's what it says, Ryback.
Casey Ryback? Jesus Christ.
Who's Casey Ryback?
Casey Ryback's a former SEAL team captain. Counter-terrorist expert.
He's my instructor at Fort Bragg. He's the best there is.
I thought you're the best there is, Penn.
When she shot the intruder, did you see the body?
No, just a load of blood, and if you get run over by a train, you usually...
Did you see the body?
I assumed he was dead.
Assumption is the mother of all Now, when every available man to resume a full train search, inside and out, car by car, include all AC ducts.
It's a bit like Liam Neeson. You kind of want to go, God, just give the guy a break. He's on a train, chill out. This is the movie. I put this in for pure nostalgia, and, it sends me back.
You get what you pay for with this one. Look, it's an Under Siege 2. You knew what you were getting with Under Siege 1. You damn sure know what you get with Under Siege 2.
He's like your Gerard Butler, isn't he? If you're Steven Seagal is your Gerard Butler of the 90s. But the Under Siege 1, it's quite an iconic poster with him in his full naval regalia, and then the ship just in front. And take it with a pinch of salt. It's pure trash. It's great fun. It's the mid-90s. Steven Seagal, whatever you think of him now, back in the day, what's not to love?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I mean, it's on a sort of on its own levels. If you're judging it sort of on its own spectrum, it doesn't have as good a villain, for instance, as the first movie. I mean, don't get me wrong. It has an interesting enough villain. Eric Bogosian going sleazy hacker is a lot of fun. It's just, it has a very different energy to Tommy Lee Jones in the first movie. And Tommy Lee Jones has that very obviously Mick Jagger inspired, evil terrorist / rocker. That's quite an image. It's weird to remember Tommy Lee Jones being that young in the leather jacket with the headband and the Mick Jagger hair with the knife between his teeth and things like that. I say, very different energy. I don't think it works quite as well, but it's vaguely amusing. It's amusing. I have a good time with it. It's fun to see the really awful visual effects as Steven Seagal runs through an exploding train and things like that.
Oh, you got to love it for that. So, guys, check it out. Monday, it's going to kick off your Monday night, 9 p.m. ITV4. A lot of harmless fun, but not so harmless for Steven Seagal.
Looking to stay in the loop with the latest movie news? Then say hello to the Daily Reel, your bite-sized hit of the biggest happenings, hirings, firings, release dates, scandals, and everything else going on behind the silver screen. Delivered to your ears every weekday morning in less time than you'll spend in the shower. Subscribe to The Daily Reel on all major podcast platforms or ask Alexa to install the Daily Reel skill for your morning flash briefing. Make your morning cinematic with The Daily Reel.
Don't get us sampled by those copyright scanners on YouTube, Becks. Jeez.
Oh, I know, because it was such a clear copyright issue I've just put up there. The reason why I was doing that is, if you didn't recognize through my dulcet tones, we're talking about the next block of movies for you here at Offscreen, and I'm kicking off your Tuesday with one of my favorite films of all time. I keep saying this, but this is when you put me in charge of picking these movies. I get to pick some of my faves. And the Blues Brothers, everybody loves somebody, you know.
Such a stone cold classic, isn't it?
Oh, just love it. John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd. It's on your TV screens on ITV4, 9 p.m. on Tuesday. I mean, this is brilliant. It's about the two brothers. They're released from prison. They're known as the Blues Brothers. Their task is to save the orphanage that they grew up in. And they're convinced
they're on a mission from God.
They're on a mission from God. Hallelujah. And the way they do it is they want to get their band back together. So it's, oh God, it's just such a great film. And it will get you dancing on your feet in your living rooms. And God, I often think, like, what a shame that we lost John Belushi so young, because he was such a talent. And Dan Aykroyd, both of them, from Saturday Night Live to this, amazing.
Well, that's it, because this is the earliest that I can think of spin-off out of Saturday Night Live. I know there had been things like Animal House that had a lot of the same kind of overlapping talent, but that's kind of incidental to Saturday Night Live. This is the first film I can remember properly spun out of, you know, having been created through Saturday Night Live, which is obviously where the Blues Brothers, I think, had debuted as characters, and then in the same way that Wayne's World would do. So Wayne's World kind of shared a lineage with the Blues Brothers through that way. But Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, sadly John Belushi would pass not long after the Blues Brothers, and then, you know, years later Dan Aykroyd would do the sequel with John Goodman and Joe Morton, and it was just an absolute travesty. But this first one is just wonderful. It just had an absolute who's who of Motown talent.
James Brown.
Exactly. Aretha Franklin, people like Cab Calloway, people like that. It was just an amazing roster. What a soundtrack for a film.
Yeah, and that soundtrack is just, I grew up with that soundtrack, and, you know, Minnie the Moocher, all that kind of stuff. You'll hear it and you know immediately it's associated with that movie. So guys, I'm talking about nostalgia yet again, but get some of it in you, because in these kind of times that we're living in, you need something to really uplift you, and there's nothing that can uplift you quite like the Blues Brothers. So that's on ITV4 at 9 p.m. Now, another film that I think will really uplift all of us is from a franchise that is so bonkers, so brilliant, so fantastically directed by George Miller, that it's spawning and it's carrying on, and we're seeing Anya Taylor-Joy step into the fold in the next year or so. We are talking about Mad Max, but Mad Max 2, Van.
Yes, Mad Max 2, or The Road Warrior, as it's called in different places. This is the one where this is the one in which Mel Gibson's Max Rockostansky, I think his name is, who is, you know, the sort of desolate loner, effectively, you know, the one-man cowboy army kind of thing, but done in a sort of dystopian Australia, happens upon a settlement, a sort of gasoline-rich settlement. They've got like a well of fuel, which makes them a target for bandits, and in exchange for you know, their help in aiding him to move along on his way and like repair him and patch him up and let him move on, Max agrees to help protect this village from the army of bandits who, you know, being a Mad Max movie, all look like they've just stepped out of the S&M club. You know, they're all head to toe in the bondage gear, despite the fact that it's the middle of the Australian desert.
Yeah. You know? It's like Burning Man, isn't it?
You know the secret, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of nipple piercings. A lot of nipple piercings in Mad Max.
See, I was getting a bit confused. I thought this was the one with Tina Turner.
Oh no, that's Mad Max 3. That's Beyond Thunderdome.
Yes, yeah, and that's the thing. I was like, I thought that was Mad Max 2, and I was like,
Two men enter, one man leaves.
I love it, and God, what a queen Tina Turner is in that. But anyway, this is just as good, just as iconic. The whole, like, the fact that actually a third movie in a franchise is super iconic is incredible when it comes to Mad Max.
Well, the one thing I always remember about Mad Max 2, other than I think Mad Max has a lot of the Evil Dead kind of a thing going on for it. You know how Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are effectively the same movie?
Yeah.
Like, rather than actually make a sequel, what Sam Raimi did was went and remade the first movie with an actual budget this time, with like a proper budget. Well, comparatively. But for some reason just decided to call it Evil Dead 2. Anyway, it's very much the same kind of thing with Mad Max 2. It is canonically the next chapter and everything, but it does feel like, okay, now we're going to show you what this looks like when we've got like a proper budget in it, because the first movie really is as bare bones as it can get. It works, it's a really good movie, but it's very bare bones. Mad Max 2 is where you kind of get the first sort of proper setup for what will become Fury Road, this absolutely blinding post-apocalyptic aesthetic. But Mad Max Road Warrior is definitely where that begins for me, I think.
Sure. I'm with you on that as well. And you know what? Again, I'll go back to kind of, I suppose, what I was sort of saying about Steven Seagal. Whatever you think of Mel Gibson now, back in the day, as Max in this, blooming brilliant, I have to say.
You know what? He is the villain in an upcoming film that I think we're going to get to review in March called Boss Level, that is basically Groundhog Day with a sort of a mercenary who keeps getting killed in a variety of different horrible ways. Like every assassin in the world is after him, John Wick style. And it's basically him trying to survive, but at the same time he's going through Groundhog Day. It looks so much fun.
Yeah.
But Mel Gibson's the baddie. I can't wait.
Yeah. And if you guys can't wait to get your Mel Gibson fix, then Mad Max 2 is on ITV4 at 10 p.m. on Wednesday. Now, when I do these picks of the week, as Van alluded to earlier, sometimes he kind of just says, look, here's a selection, you pick whatever you want. And sometimes he goes, no, but I definitely want a movie in this. And that happened this week. That happened. And I might go and watch this as a result of Van's pushiness around this. Crimson Tide, ITV4, 9 p.m. Why the love?
Right, I love Crimson Tide. Crimson Tide is a 1995, 1996 thriller from Tony Scott. It stars Gene Hackman, Denzel Washington, Viggo Mortensen, James Gandolfini, George Zunda. It's just got a hell of a cast in there. Right, there's a young Ryan Philippe in there. It's a vintage Bruckheimer film, Jerry Bruckheimer producing, so it's got that kind of, CG enhanced camera motions and things like that, the quick cut editing, it's got the gritty, machismo driven script that's got those little pearls of wisdom. It's just a wonderful film. And the gist here, this one follows a mutiny on a nuclear submarine during a time of great political tension between America and, what sort of seems to be, Russia in the midst of a coup. And they are cut off from communications with the home base just after they come under attack and having received orders to launch a nuclear strike. However, they've also received another command, but the transmission is garbled. And the captain thinks, to hell with that, we've not got the instructions, we should launch. And the first officer says, no, we should play it safe. And hence a mutiny erupts between Denzel and Gene Hackman. Honestly, you can't beat that for an awesome concept.
All I'm saying, Captain, is that we have backup. Now it's our duty not to launch until we can confirm.
You're presuming that we have other submarines out there ready to launch. But as captain, I must assume that our submarines could have been taken out by other Akulas. We can play these games all night, Mr. Hunter, but I don't have the luxury of your presumptions.
Sir.
Mr. Hunter, we have rules that are not open to interpretation, personal intuition, gut feelings, hairs on the back of your neck, little devils or angels sitting on your shoulders.
Captain.
So we're all very well aware of what our orders are and what those orders mean. They come down from our commander-in-chief. They contain no ambiguity.
Captain.
Mr. Hunter, I've made a decision. I'm captain of this boat. Now shut the up!
I always get this film slightly mixed up with Hunt for the Red October.
I can understand that because they're submarines and the posters are red.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, I can understand that completely.
The one's got Tim
I think this is a better movie. This is way, way better, though.
Yeah, and again, I'm gonna rewatch this because of that conflict that I have of kind of not remembering which one's which. But what a cast!
Oh, the thing to remember about this one as well, this is the one that has a script that was given a sort of rewrite by Quentin Tarantino. They brought him in to punch up the dialogue. So there's literally a point in which two naval officers start beating each other up in an argument over who created the coolest iteration of the Silver Surfer.
Of course there is.
Yeah, that kind of like weird, random pop culture aside in the middle of it. But other than that, it's a really good movie. Like, I think this is just a really solid thriller. This is, I think, one of the best thrillers of the 90s. Just never gets anywhere near the credit it deserves.
I'm currently taking my hubby through a journey of 90s movies. We've watched A Few Good Men. We've watched Crimson Tide. Not Crimson Tide, sorry. Cape Fear the other day.
Ah, yes.
So I might add this to the list for this weekend because I think this will be a really good one to show him.
Yeah, absolutely should. I think it is showing on like Amazon Prime as well. So I think maybe on Prime.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, well, let's round off your weekend. And I had to pick this one as a bit of a finisher because I think you always need a bit of an uplifting, funny movie to take you into a weekend where you're not going to be doing much. So on ITV2, 9 o'clock, we have, and again, this shows, I've got a real love for not obvious reasons for Zac Efron, but one of the big reasons is that he is very diverse as an actor and his comedic side is brilliant. And this movie,
grant you that, yeah.
Yeah, this movie, Bad Neighbours, has one of my favourite lines of "Can you just keep it down?" from Rose Byrne, and it also stars Seth Rogen, Dave Franco as well. This is the story of a couple called Mac and Kelly who have a peaceful suburban life, but it's offset when a frat house is put next door to them, and they are basically continually inhabited by constantly partying college students, and no matter how hard they try, these guys will never ever pipe down.
No, it's absolutely it's chaotic as hell, isn't it? Yeah. I think it's a really fun movie. The sequel actually isn't bad. It's a bit of a retread. I think like once you've done it once, you're kind of stuck in it's horrible bosses again. It's horrible bosses too. There's no way to do that and make it completely work.
Yeah.
There's some stuff about the second stuff that is pretty decent. They do a pretty good exploration of like Zac Efron's character and where he might go. But other than that, there is a retread to it. The first one, I think, is very good. It does have a great moment involving a Creed song, in which it's discovered that this frat house uses the song "Higher" by Creed as a sort of party chant, which I have a lot of respect, a lot of bro points for that one. Yeah, give me some 2000 Creed, man. Yeah. Shout out to my boy Wilson for that. But I think this is Zac Efron trying his bro comedic route, his Apatow level humor, his Seth Rogenism. And I think this leads to him doing Baywatch as well, for instance, and things like That Awkward Moment, where he did branch out into more broader, gross out sex comedy kind of things for a while, like for 5 minutes. And he was pretty good at them, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and then he went and made documentaries about, how we can save the planet.
They all take a career pivot. I mean, like Robert Downey Jr. is trying to invent AI or something to solve global warming.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all taking a leaf out of Leonardo DiCaprio's book. But look, if you have a quick Google of Bad Neighbours, there are a few reviews that are like weakly drawn characters, a few laughs, it's kind of enjoyable. Guys, take it for what it is. It's a fun Friday night movie. It will get you laughing. It's definitely not one for the kids, but it's got great performances from Rose Byrne, Seth Rogen, and of course Zac Efron. It's on ITV.
Is this the one with Ike Barinholtz in as well? I think it is, isn't it? I think Ike Barinholtz is Seth Rogen's best friend in this one.
Maybe. I'll have to double check.
It might be Ike Barinholtz. I remember Seth Rogen's best friend character being played by someone quite funny.
Yes, it is. Jimmy. He plays Jimmy.
Yes, it is. Yeah. He gets some really great moments in this as the sort of idiot sidekick friend. I think he's really underappreciated in these films. Ike Barinholtz is great anyway. But yes, as you say, ITV2, 9 p.m. Friday night, Becks.
Absolutely. And coming up next for you, we will be back with some DVD, Blu-ray, and of course, streaming.
Welcome back to Off Screen. And yes, it's time for your DVD, your Blu-ray, your streaming options, which, in better times, we would say these would be your home offerings. But I guess alas, for now, it's the long-awaited, I can't believe this has taken so long. So Monday the 25th of January, we finally get the DVD and Blu-ray release in this country of Bill and Ted Face the Music. It's taken like 6 solid months, hasn't it? Wasn't it August?
Yeah, and I remember, so this was released in the UK, it was released in cinemas. For obvious reasons, it took no money. And this,
it's 30 or 300 grand or something like that.
yeah, for obvious reasons, this should have gone straight to streaming and had a big marketing push for it to do that, or video on demand or whatever. And the cult audience of Bill and Ted, like me, who was absolutely chomping at the bit to go and watch this, would have paid good money for it. But I certainly wasn't going to go out to the cinema, unfortunately.
No, I completely agree. Of course, the plot this time around is it is pretty much real time since the events of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. It's been like 30 years. They're now middle-aged dads to 20-something slacker children themselves. Billy, her name's Billy, like Wilhelmina, shortened Wilhelmina, and Theodora, I think her name. So they literally have named their kids Bill and Ted as well, and they are summoned by the sort of high court judges of the future to tell them they have like 70 minutes to record the song that's going to save all of time and space and reality from imploding in on itself.
Greetings, my excellent friends.
Do we know you?
I'm Kelly.
Wait, you're Rufus's daughter.
I am, and I've been wanting to meet you my whole life.
It must be very disappointing.
Not at all. We have a problem, gentlemen. Potentially a very serious problem.
About the music?
About the music. They just want to talk to you.
Dude, I got a very bad feeling about this.
It'll be fine, Ted. They totally love us in the future, dude.
A couple of lovely little nods to Rufus, actually, in this movie, which I really appreciated. But this, okay, I'm coming at this as a big fan of the first two movies. I actually rewatched them in anticipation of watching this, and those movies still hold up. I was a bit meh about this movie. It satisfied audiences in a couple of ways. I thought Death was brilliant in it for a small section of the film, and I was so glad to see that. I thought Alex Winter was great as he came back. But Keanu Reeves, interestingly, like, he has aged really well, but in this, he just looked like he'd aged a million years. It was crazy.
Seeing him with the beard, that's why he's had the beard for so long now that you've forgotten like what he actually looks like. That's totally what happened. But I mean, I agree with you. Like, I don't think the film is in any way as memorable as the first two films.
No.
It certainly doesn't quite justify its existence, but what it does play as eventually, like, I mean, I came at it as a huge fan. I was really let down at first. I didn't like the sudden pivot to something a lot more forced in terms of a ticking clock. This seemed a lot more stringent about pushing that impending deadline down upon the characters in the previous movies. It didn't feel like it stopped to breathe quite as much as those two movies. In the first two movies always had that. They had, even though Bill and Ted aren't stoner characters, it had that stoner movie appeal of, yes, we're in a crisis, but we've got to stop, just breathe deeply, make a zen-like wisecrack, and then we'll move at a leisurely pace. It feels a lot more rushed and a lot more haphazard. Great stuff in it. I love there's a cameo by Dave Grohl that I think is just absolutely tremendous. It's interesting to me that Bill and Ted aren't really asked to update their musical stylings so much as they are incorporate other genres into it. So Kid Cudi, for instance, is a very minor character in the film. There is this subtle incorporation of elements of hip hop and rap and things like that into the Bill and Ted sort of fandom, sort of lore and mythology as well, which I thought was quite a neat addition. I like it on the whole, and it's a very good celebratory send-off. But at the same time, it's not essential viewing.
No. The thing is, for fans, what you're going to see that's going to really make you chuckle is they bring back the real Mindy. I mean, Mom. The real Deacon, you know.
Yeah, Mom.
Yeah. Misty. Mindy.
No, it's Missy.
Missy. Yeah, I don't know what, Mindy Kaling. I was just thinking of Mindy Kaling for some weird reason. But Missy, I mean, Mom, Deacon, like all of that stuff. And then they have that element from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure of just bringing back all these characters from history again. And that bit I was a little bit like, oh, yawn, eye roll, because we've seen it all before. And I kind of wanted them to do something else. But then there's something else of them seeing their old selves and like the failure versions of them. I didn't love that either. So it didn't piece together like a solid puzzle for me. So I'm totally with you that this isn't essential viewing, but it is a lot of fun for fans.
Oh, definitely. It is a lot of fun, as I say. But so that's available on DVD and Blu-ray from this coming Monday, the 25th. Also out the same day, and this is in no way really as memorable either, because I hadn't even realised that this hadn't come out yet. It's Await Further Instructions, which is a sort of is it British or Canadian? I can't quite remember. I think it might be American-made, filmed in Britain. It's got an intriguing sort of lineage to it. It's like, I think it's American money, but they've made a British horror movie for some reason that's a little bit kind of prescient now that I think back on it. So it's the story of a guy takes his girlfriend home to meet his parents for Christmas in Britain. And they wake up one morning, they're walled in their house, there are government instructions coming over the TV to tell them to await further instructions, and then the government starts issuing increasingly strange instructions in order for the family to survive. And it's a question of how far the family are willing to go before they really indulge in their own paranoia. It's visually quite an interesting film. It doesn't quite land as successfully as it needs to. It's a little bit unsuccessful in really selling the true reality of what it's going through. It does kind of feel a bit needlessly hammy, I think.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's grittier than it is, definitely. Okay. But visually quite interesting. It's called Await Further Instructions. Also out the same day is The Doorman. You might have seen the trailer for this with Jean Reno and Ruby Rose.
No, I haven't actually, but I didn't realise that was Ruby Rose. Okay, interesting.
So this is Ruby Rose, is sort of the ex-Special Forces mercenary type who takes a job as a doorman in one of those sort of New York apartment buildings. You know, those boutique ones that have, like, you know, the doorman with the nice hat and the coat stands behind a reception desk.
Okay. She's kind of, I slightly eye roll at this because it's like, come on, Ruby Rose, do something different. Like, you know, she kind of plays a similar character in everything.
Well, you know what? She's fun at it. I say let her do it. I mean, I hear this is kind of disposable fun. I'm looking forward to watching it. I will give this a watch now. But, you know, it's Jean Reno and Ruby Rose in, you know, a poster that's got flames on it with a bit bright yellow background. I kind of know what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
When it's Ruby Rose is the doorman. I'm kind of like, yeah, this is like Steven Seagal is the janitor, you know. Mop the floor with them, you know. It's just, you know, it's kind of nonsense, but I'm on board. Like, throw me a couple of cool death scenes, you know, a couple of well choreographed fights, and some lantern-jawed action movie dialogue, you know, and I'm good, you know.
Fair enough. Well, let's move across to streaming now. There is a big movie coming out on Friday on
Netflix, isn't it?
I was about to say on the Netflix.
On the Netflix? Yeah. Did you hear about it on the Facebook, Rebecca?
I may have done the van. But this is a movie, it's had quite a lot of press about it. Stars Carey Mulligan, stars Lily James, Ray Fiennes, Johnny Flynn. Ben Chaplin as well is in this as well. And it's a drama which is about a well-to-do lady out in the country who employs, I suppose, like, not a farmer, but someone who knows how to do some excavating.
He's a sort of amateur archaeologist. He was an amateur archaeologist, because this is a true story. This is based on the Sutton Hoo excavation, as it's called. And like you say, rich lady who thought she had stuff that needed excavating on her land and hired an archaeologist to basically dig it up and catalogue everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And they discover this massive Viking ship, and it's just, you know, it's big. This movie, there was some interesting things about this. Originally, Carey Mulligan's character was supposed to be played by Nicole Kidman, but Carey Mulligan's
step. There's a bit of an age difference, isn't there?
Yeah. Because the casting because there is a romantic tale between her character and Ray Fiennes' character, and I kind of thought that was a bit weird, and I didn't feel like she was old enough to play this woman of stature who, you know, had this land and all that.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Because she's as well at the moment, because she's been quite heavily advertised on Promising Young Woman, in which she is playing sort of like, you know, a 28-year-old, you know, viper hot psycho assassin lady out for vengeance. Well, not assassin, but, you know, out for vigilante type figure. So seeing her play something this kind of buttoned down and emotionally wrought with that romantic element with a guy the age that Ray Fiennes is, you can see the problematic nature of that. It's a difficult sell. But it's, you know, apparently it is sold on the emotional side.
Yeah, and she's kind of playing to type in this. Like, it's what you'd expect from Carey Mulligan in a way. It's a period drama. It's...
You just hit it on the head there. Playing to type. Is it a period drama? Yes, it is. Is she going to be unhappy and physically mistreated for a lot of this role? Yes. Yes, she is.
Yes. Is there going to be an odd side smile every other scene? Yeah, probably is. But look, I'm quite looking forward to this. Like, I love Johnny Flynn. I know we kind of gave Stardust a bit of a battering. Starman, sorry.
But not for him, Stardust. But we didn't give it a battery for him. I think we were both quite specific that he was perfectly fine in Stardust.
Yeah, he was, and this is the thing, and he's emerging to be this brilliant actor who's coming up on the kind of indie stakes, moving into more of the mainstream. And what we're seeing now is him moving into getting a wider fan base through a big Netflix movie that they're putting a lot of emphasis behind. It will be interesting to seeing that they couldn't get Nicole Kidman to play the role due to scheduling, whether or not this comes out as a bit of a disjointed movie. But overall, I'm looking forward to it. And it's out next Friday on Netflix.
Absolutely. So next week, we've got a couple of movies I'm really looking forward to next week. We've got the reboot of the Wrong Turn series next week, brilliantly entitled Wrong Turn. We've also got the stars of two separate streaming movies from recent weeks. The stars of Wild Mountain Time and Outside the Wire join forces as Jamie Dornan and Anthony Mackie team up in the sci-fi time travel actioner Synchronic, out next week as well, so we can have a look at those, as well as all the movies on Freeview, streaming, DVD, and Blu-ray. So until next week, I've been Van Connor.
And I've been Becks Perfect, and we shall return.